So when you're making cocktails, there are rules. What an acceptable base spirit can be, when to shake, when to stir, what a name can be. We tend to think of these as rules because they tend to yield better drinks. But then you meet a drink that breaks like all of these rules and is incredible anyway. I am Robb Report's resident bartender, Jason O'Brien, and this is a cocktail called Growing Old and Dying Happy is a Hope, Not an Inevitability. Trust me, it's better than it sounds. When you look at cocktail books, they all have a tendency to be the same. They all say, here's how to shake, here's how to stir, here's just versions of classics. They're all kind of different versions of each other, essentially. So a couple bartenders in New Orleans, Max Bazuniak and Kirk Estopanel, are working a shift at a bar called Cure in 2009 and feeling a little uninspired by all of this persistent sameness. So they think to themselves, let's make something outside of this norm. And the cocktail they end up making is called a Gun Shop Fizz. It's essentially a Pimm's cup, except they take away the Pimm's as a base and use 2 ounces of Peychaud's bitters, which is crazy. Instead of 1 citrus peel, which is normal, they use 6, which is insane. Instead of muddling and just making it, they muddle and decide it needs to infuse for 2 minutes, which is weird. And they top it with this esoteric soda called sand bitter that no one's ever heard of, which is crazy. This drink is completely nuts, except for the fact that it's delicious. And they're thrilled. This is exactly what they're looking for. So they reach out to a bunch of bartender friends for drinks that are similarly ludicrous, and in come a bunch of submissions, and out of that comes a book called Rogue Cocktails that they self-published in 2009. They only printed like 400 copies. The point of this was not to make money. The whole thing was punk rock from top to bottom. The entire book is like 50 cocktails, but every single one of them breaks the rules in some amazing and delicious way. We could shoot a video about any one of those drinks and it would be fascinating. But today we're gonna make one of my absolute favorites from this book called Growing Old and Dying Happy is a Hope, Not an Inevitability. So let me show you how to make it. So we start with the base spirit of this drink, which is Cynar. And already we're in weird territory. Cynar is an Italian bitter. It's an Amaro. It's only 16.5%, usually used in small amounts to accent another cocktail. So it's infused with 13 herbs, plants, roots, most notably the noble artichoke, which graces our front label here. And it doesn't smell like artichokes. It doesn't taste like artichokes. What it tastes like is earth. It's incredibly robustly bitter, deep, rich, resonant flavor, and used here in 2 full ounces. Next up, rye whiskey. For this drink, I like to use Wild Turkey 101 or Rittenhouse rye. Now what you need the rye for in this particular case is proof. So you want something that's at least 100 proof, which is 50% alcohol. Now I like Wild Turkey here because it's very rye forward. It's got a full body. If you wanted to punch it up a little bit, you could do something like Whistle Pig. Still 100 proof, because that's very important. This one is 10 years old, so it's more expensive, but it will come with a little bit more richness from the oak that will kind of help shine through the drink. And if you really wanted to make this blowout, best you could possibly make it, a high proof and expensive thing like the Thomas Handy Sazerac would be amazing if you could find it. But today, I'm going to use the Wild Turkey. I like using Wild Turkey because it's full-bodied and rye forward and a little peppery, and it's got the proof. And no matter what rye you use, we're going to need 1 ounce of it. So far, essentially what we've done is create a reverse Manhattan, where a Manhattan would be 2 ounces of rye and 1 of vermouth. This is the opposite. Cynar is not a vermouth, but it's a similar proof and sweetness. The next step is what really caught my attention the first time I heard about this drink, which is a pinch of salt. So one of the interesting things about salt is that salt in liquids mitigates bitterness even more than sugar does. And when we're dealing with 2 ounces of something that is robustly, intensely bitter, a pinch of salt really goes a long way. It's gonna lift the aromas, mitigate the bitterness, and you can think of it as like seasoning the artichokes. Now you don't want it salty, just a pinch, just enough to make the flavors pop. And finally, in what's kind of a Rogue Cocktails trademark, you want a lemon peel. But you don't want just 1 lemon peel or 2, you want 5. And you put them right in the mixing glass to stir with the ice. Now, we add ice, stir. If you've got small ice like this, you only need to stir for 5 or 10 seconds. If you've got bigger ice, you need to stir for a little longer. And finally, we strain into an absinthe-rinsed coupe. And as a garnish, as if we didn't have enough already, is one last lemon peel, expressed over the top of the drink, like so. I regret to inform you, growing old and dying happy is a hope, not an inevitability. Let's give it a taste. It's hard to say what the first thing you notice is, but the first thing that I notice is that the salt makes it savory in a way that you really just don't have in cocktails normally. Now the salt does mitigate the bitterness, so you can taste more of the Cynar, more of the artichoke-y character, but I don't want to oversell it. This is a very bitter drink. This is for your Boulevardier fans, your Negroni fans. This is something cool and new that they haven't had. The quantity of the lemon oil mixed with the absinthe, mixed with the savoriness of the Cynar is just out of this world. I've never had anything like this before and I love it. So when I was coming up, when I was just learning this craft, these guys were already great at it. And when I read this book, it blew my mind wide open. And the enduring legacy of it is that it gave us all permission to break the rules. You know, personally, I prefer serving this cocktail on the rocks. And while that's not the recipe, something tells me they wouldn't mind. It's both completely new and totally delicious.